into effect a certain chain of events, because Hillary Clinton says you should go, and they said that to Gaddafi, and we know what happened to him. I mean, doesn't the West put itself into a position where it just keeps it has to keep going down this same path? It can't back off because it's already said you have to go.
Well, I think that's true, and there's danger of that. There's also danger that economic sanctions, when you put them on in the case of Syria or Iran, sometimes that leads to war. We saw that in Panama in 1989. We saw it in Saddam Hussein in 1990. And you can also say that Libya had the same issue. When you tell a ruler that they have to go, and it's bizarre in the case of Libya because he was doing what the West wanted him to do, getting rid of his nuclear program, et cetera.
Exactly.
But he was playing the game, and of course, that's also a problem when you take out people who don't have nuclear weapons and that sort of thing. You're encouraging more countries to go after him. Certainly, Syria has. A nuclear plant or a nuclear facility was destroyed in Syria. And so when you take out places like Libya and Iraq that don't have nuclear weapons, and yet North Korea gets a free pass because they do have nuclear weapons, it encourages these countries to go after these types of weapons. And I think you do go down a path. When you put economic sanctions on, they're often sold as an alternative to war, but really it ratchets up the stakes, and then people say, well, gee, these sanctions didn't work in getting rid of this regime, which they almost never do. I did a study on economic sanctions once, and they can do very modest things, but when you're talking about getting rid of a nuclear program or overthrowing a regime, they just don't do it because the regime has every incentive to absorb the cost of sanctions, maybe divert them to portions of the population that that have no political power, and keep going on because their survival is at stake. And I think that's what's in it for Assad, is he's not going to buckle to the sanctions, and then you're going to have to say, well, gee, what do we do after the sanctions don't work? So sometimes, even when you don't want to get trapped into a war, you want to do something alternative like sanctions, it leads to war because you're going down that path, and that's exactly the problem with Syria, and I would also argue Iran, U.S. policy toward Iran.
Okay, Majid, if I go back to you in Los Angeles, I mean, my sense is that there is a civil war already going on in Syria, and Assad will be overthrown eventually, and I think there'll be outside involvement in that, one form or another, to one degree or another. What kind of Syria will come out after that? I mean, do you believe it'll be a democratic Syria, or the Muslim Brotherhood is one of the very influential group in Syria, and we saw what happened in Egypt, and they may want to start talking about different foreign policies, and that doesn't necessarily mean it would be it would be sit pleasantly next to Israel like it has for the past 30 years.
Well, I think we've seen, that it is, the Syrian people would be really better off without Assad, and I think he should be held accountable in the International Criminal Court. And I believe the Syrian regime has been trying to depict that if they are removed, there will be civil war and instability, and they are trying to inflict fear inside the people to keep
All right, gentlemen, we've run out of time. Very interesting discussion on Syria. Many thanks to my guests today in Los Angeles and in Washington. Thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.